our little shade has almost been alive for a day. Today we're going to explore these caverns, see what else is around here. What is it the king feared so much that he wanted us to never explore here? It's interesting that Games Done Quick has started the marathon recently. I didn't apply to participate at Games Done Quick. And here we are playing, though, a game that's the absolute opposite of speedrunning. A game that would take about 400 days to complete, casually. There is a speedrun of the game, taking less than 2 hours, or right around 2 hours to complete. There are various, in speedrunning we have any percent. There are various objectives, some less than 2 hours, some above 2 hours, but yeah, speedrun of the longest, I don't know, is this the longest game ever? But the longing. Yeah, so we're gonna get right into the game. I'm just gonna hang out, gonna chill, and just absorb the vibe the game gives off. I will chime in though with some of the lore, some of the things that I learned from playing the game multiple times, and perhaps we'll see some of that lore today, maybe not. Here we go. At last, reaching our first 24 hours. I'm not sure why finding nothing is so disappointing. But this shade thinks so. But there we are, one day. A rock as hard and heavy as my disappointment. Seems to be a lot of disappointments to be found today. What disappointments do? I'm not sure. I know that you can get rid of them. You can clean yourself of your disappointments, perhaps think better of yourself, or what you have or haven't accomplished. And in the multiple times I've played the game, because I knew where the disappointments were, I tended to avoid them. I am curious, however, if having disappointments creates any difference in the game. So I mean to collect them this time. There seems to be an old mine down here. Maybe a good place to find some useful things. Like disappointments. They're useful, right? I suppose what you do with them is what makes them useful or not. A fallen brother is returning home. A piece of wood. One of my biggest dreams is to build a bed someday. Oh, right. I want to increase the brightness. I see no difference, but I have noticed reviewing the stream, changing some of the colors on my capture card does make things a little bit brighter, because it is quite dark. Lots of coal here. It is a mine after all. Makes sense. That's a tiny piece of wood. It's very hard to distinguish the gray of the caves with the very light, faded brown of the wood. But you can just make out another one right there. I did some digging around today. On the Steam page for this game, there's an FAQ with a lot of spoilers. When it comes to endings, I was speculating in the last stream that perhaps there are 5 endings, just like the colors of chalk. It said, though, there are only 4 endings. There seems to be no easy way down. Okay, well, what's the hard way down? You may have noticed the sound. Easy to think of it as just ambience walking around. However, right around here, it seems to trigger that sound. And then looking at the supports directly below us, it looks to be cracked off to the side. If you get really close and observe the pixels, you can see as we walk over it, little tiny specks. I once heard a talk about making, how would you say, making your dreams reality, making progress. What does it take to achieve a dream? What does it take to make a large project like a video game? And someone said, think of each day as just 1%. 1% of growth, 1% of change. As hard as you work, as much as you accomplish in a whole day, even if you work your absolute hardest, at the end of that day, it's only going to be 1%. 1% towards that goal. You might think 1%, that's not a lot. We're not really getting a lot done in that time. Well, I think that's something to be said about that. Here, we're going to be playing Belonging every day. And if we think of each day as 1%, how far will we have come in 100 days? It's not to think of that 1% as a disappointment. Or I guess other things, such as bodybuilding or people trying to lose weight, trying to make significant changes to your body, to think of each day as 1%. And if after a week you don't see anything changing, you think, well, why not? There should have been a lot of change by now. I should be seeing all kinds of differences. Now, it's honestly quite small what you've done. But there's also the people who, just because they've missed one day, they'll give up entirely. You'll probably have met people who do, what do you call these? New Year's resolutions. And they'll start on a new thing, but they'll miss one day, and then because of that, that's it. The pattern is ruined, and there's no going back. But if you think of each day as just 1%, and if you've made a week's worth of progress, and then you miss a day, you haven't lost a week's worth of progress. That's not how it works. You've lost maybe another percentage of growth. Maybe you've lost a percentage. And that's an interesting detail. If each day is only 1% of growth, which direction is that growth going? Is it perhaps a positive growth or a negative growth? Just because you didn't do something for one day, it may not be negative 1%. Maybe it was only negative 0.5%. Maybe you've lost a fraction of even that. So, as long as you are persistent, you come back to it again and again, you're still achieving that thing. You're still developing a pattern. And I think that's normal when you're starting something that's unfamiliar to you, starting a new pattern. It's going to take some time to get used to that new pattern, So if you miss a day or two, I don't intend to miss any days for trying to stream this game, but inevitably it might happen. Will we lose a lot of progress? Maybe not. Maybe we will. But I think it's important that, we keep coming back and keep building on that progress we're making, even if it doesn't seem like we're making a lot of change. Over time, those little 1%, they begin to add up. And that's what I mean about this game, belonging, just from playing it. And having the time to just have these thoughts for myself and just pondering things in a way that most of life doesn't give us the opportunity to think about. Especially, if you're involved in speedrunning. Granted, there is the time to play the game casually, to learn the game, to get to know it, get familiar with it. Some people skip that. Just jump right into the speedrun. See if I can optimize where I walk. Yeah, that's sounding a bit faster. Oh, I missed one. Trying to optimize our 1% here. This is very different than the door. The door we just sat idly by and watched for 2 hours as it slowly opened. This one, we can't be passive about it. We have to take that action to go back and forth. But I think that doubt of wondering, am I making progress? Is this doing anything? Or am I just wasting my time? I think that's normal. It takes somebody from an outside perspective to look at it and to notice the changes. I think this is also why people do those daily gallery blogs, taking a photo of yourself every day if you're trying to make a physical change. Because if you look at that piece of wood down there, We've been walking back and forth. I haven't seen any drastic changes, but I would imagine if you perhaps go back and look at the VOD, you might be able to see a distinct difference from where we began to the way it looks now. Sometimes you want that light at the end of the tunnel, you know? When do I get to that other side? When will I reach that goal that I was looking for? I think that's not the healthy way of thinking about it. It's perhaps finding something within the pattern itself that's enjoyable. I think that's why a lot of people who, once they make a lifestyle change and start to get into fitness, that they stick with it. And it becomes a daily routine that they just can't stop doing because they've changed their mindset. They found something within it that's fulfilling on that daily basis. And that they are making those gains from it, even though if it's not visible anymore. It's just perhaps maintaining it, perhaps, I don't know, it's hard to say, but it's hard to say if it's become unhealthy in some ways because now it's just a daily time-consuming thing that they do. But that's looking at it from the outside. Perhaps for them, they're getting something from that process. I think considering if it is a lifestyle change, is that something I really want to do every day, forever and ever? Yeah, I don't think of it that way. If you find what you enjoy in that process, that's what matters. What am I enjoying out of this process right now? Just sharing these thoughts. If you look down over here, you notice a small mattock. That was something this shade mentioned when we were at our home yesterday. Wanting to improve the home, and if we had a mattock, we could do so. In some ways it's a tease. Ooh, here's a mattock that you were looking for, but then you can't reach it. I seem to have to turn around directly above these posts. I had wondered perhaps, what if I can just sit here? Right on this spot. Would that work? Would that cause any difference? It might be. Certainly sounds like it. Oh my gosh. Patience pays off, after all. Piece of wood. So this is weird. You had to walk at a downwards angle to walk around that ramp there. Otherwise we would walk up it. A handy mattock, useful for harvesting minerals and for breaking through fragile walls. No disappointments to be found there. I suppose because we found the mattock. And you would think, with that slope, could we walk up this side? We cannot. I believe this is one of those areas where you can walk upwards at an angle, and it does nothing for us. Okay, it's not here. I see you, door. I acknowledge you're there. I just want to keep walking. This must be the coal mine. I'll need plenty for my fireplace at home. This is going to take a while. I am not the strongest, but luckily I have plenty of time. I like our little shade. He's a determined little character. Ooh. Pick it up. I don't know if that was a chunk of coal that had fallen from the ceiling, or if we had picked that. Does it matter? Come on, get it. Get it. So you can hear the coal falling. It's kind of a soft, bouncy sound. So one of the things I was reading on this Steam post, I have made very little progress yet, was the endings, of course. There are the 4 endings. There's an FAQ. But when it comes to a lot of the speculation about the endings in particular, the developer has absolutely nothing to say. He lets the game speak for itself. And I enjoy that. It's fun to have this community speculation of what certain things mean, perhaps. And the developer neither confirming nor denying. I would like to search around online, find some interviews, perhaps. I don't know. No, he says made little progress yet. Okay, we're still continuing. We didn't start over. Yeah, I'm curious though if in some interviews he may have answered some questions. Things like inspiration for the game. I do know that back at our home, there are books. We have a couple of books there. We have 4, to be exact. One of them is a book of our thoughts. Not even halfway there. And there are other books to be found. In one of these books, in a couple of them, are bits of poetry and such. And those little bits of poem, they refer to the game itself. Refer to perhaps an ending or two. Things about the king, things about the shade. It seems to be the inspiration that the developer had from reading those. They were an inspiration for creating this game. I remember when I first started to play the game, you can see these icons at the very top. You know, they're all in little, clever, nicely shaped squares, right? We have the D for the days, the hours, the minutes, the seconds. And then you have these other icons for sound, music, and light. I had thought perhaps those 3 were items that we had. And I thought all these empty squares around the entire rest of this frame, I thought they would be other items that we can find in our way. Along the journey, you know, and perhaps it will be a goal to find them, to fill in that whole thing. And I thought, wow, 400 days to find all these things, that's going to be huge. This is daunting. This game is immense. Yeah, it's just a frame. It's just graphics. It's none of that. Yeah, if I change one of the settings, such as the sound, you can see it changes the shading of that icon. And the brightness increased the candle from being off to it being in this state, which is the brightest. I don't see a difference. Perhaps on the Switch display, it's more noticeable. This task we're doing, it's repeatable. Once we've finished, we can do it again. It could become like a daily routine for these resources to walk over here. And in that way, this shade, you start to develop a familiarity with him. You become used to having this shade around. I do like you don't have to take care of him. He doesn't need to be fed. He's not this sort of Tamagotchi pet kind of thing. This game doesn't impose itself on your life. It's a choice. I did read on that forum. Somebody started a game and they left it for 400 days. And they came back. And for them, they said it was worth it. They enjoyed it. Having done nothing of exploration, haven't really explored any of the world, but yet they still spent the same 400 days that everyone else who played the game had spent. They just spent it doing other things. And for them, that was worth it. It's an interesting thought, though. This is something I think of often, is that a year from now, a year will have been spent, regardless of me doing something great with it or just idly spending it. It's going to be spent regardless. And what you do with that, you know, you can't choose to not spend it. Finally, the bowl gave up its minerals. A big old nugget of coal. This is 5 lumps worth. I think just standing here, picking at it, we've picked up more than 5 pieces. But again, we could start the action, walk away, come back again later, you know, maybe we're making a breakfast or something. Pick at it, and when our breakfast is done, we have 5 more coal. To burn a fire, it takes 5 coal. Seems like there are some valuable minerals hidden in these walls. Ooh. It's not very hard, but a strange smell is emanating from it. What could it be? That was some quick progress. It's strange now, having picked at that coal, that with our perspective of that experience, and now looking at this, we would say this is fast, even though it's easily going to take us about a minute. The wall gave up its minerals. Piece of sulfur. It smells horrible, but I'm sure I'll find a way to make use of it. This is actually our yellow chalk, and we can do some art with this. Same with the coal. The coal was our black chalk. We could also build a fire with the sulfur, but to do so, we're going to need 5 pieces of it. I do believe that the yellow chalk is unlocked regardless of us having any sulfur. So if we had spent, well, first if we had gathered 5 sulfur and then spent 5 sulfur making a fire of it, I don't think we would lose the yellow chalk. So while we're here, we're going to collect our 5 pieces of sulfur. I don't know why he pauses. It's not the dialogue. And there's nothing wrong with the capture card. But yeah, let's talk a bit about the lore. There are mines here. Did the king have other people that lived and worked with the king? Were there other inhabitants who did their own thing here? You know, this Matic had to have come from somewhere. The minecart that was there, that was turned over. The structure. Somebody's been mining here, but for what purpose? And where are they now? Are they like us? Are they like the king? Why did they leave? I do say why did they leave because the king made us to wake him after the 400 days. He didn't ask any other to do it, us. And he told us not to leave the caves. Perhaps those others have left the caves. Perhaps the king doesn't want us to meet these others. I think it interesting, the shade, walking into a dead end. He doesn't see potential there. He sees disappointment. He sees a stairway that goes to nowhere. He's not thinking, oh, I can make something out of this. He's not really the builder or the crafter. Not the crafter, but yet he draws. What I mean by that is he's perhaps not like those workers who used to mine this place before we arrived. He sort of does these things just to bide his own time. But yeah, unlike coal, sulfur does not fall from the ceiling or anywhere, and that's the only place that we can find it. So yeah, for the shade exploring and finding a dead end, I guess it's disappointing, it's upsetting that somebody perhaps had the intention of building something there, but they didn't finish. And to the shade, that's perhaps what's disappointing about it. And that's the thing he sees and feels from having experienced that. Reaching a place that will never be finished. It will never be what the person who started to build it had intended. I really like the feeling of depth, that we've just walked a very long way from this deep passage into the dark. We might come back here. There might be a reason for us to come back and gather a bunch of coal. But coal takes a long time to dig. We could easily set up at the end of a stream to start digging some coal and just leave it there. Seems to have abandoned this area a long time ago. So whoever was here, it was a long time ago that they had left. Perhaps the king had been living just by himself in solitary, just content with himself for a very long time until he decided he needs this shade. I'm trying to find solutions to all my problems, but somehow I just keep running into walls. Well, it wasn't a disappointment, at least. But yeah, the king said he needs to rest and gather his power, gather his strength, at which time he will end all fear and longing. And that these 400 days, the king is sleeping, and when it's finished, we will wake him. So he needs us like an alarm clock. Looks like this is the end of my journey. I could try to move the stone over there, but that would be a miserable task. Would it though? No, I don't think we want to push it this way. We've made 1% of negative growth. You can see it slightly roll, and then he stops. So I have to push the button again. This is pancakes. This is something I've talked about in other streams, something to do with game development, where you don't just give the player a single button press and then it does a very elaborate action. Make the player go through the steps of that elaborate action, and you get something out of that experience. I call it pancakes because pancakes, you can bake the toppings inside the pancake, and it's all just built in. Or you can put the toppings yourself. And when you put the toppings yourself, there's something enriching about that experience of knowing this is the flavor I crafted. In the same way with a game, this is the experience that I took part in. I didn't just press A to watch a movie. I'm really feeling this effort of pushing this rock here. Ooh. I may have just drifted off to the side. Yeah, he's not climbing. Not yet. I do believe once we've pushed it, then that's the end of the journey of the rock. I don't think we can push it back. Yeah, that's just my controllers. There we are. The king will not like this adventurous spirit of mine. Well, the king's not around to answer my questions about who used to live here. So I'll have to get a few answers for myself. Ooh, something shiny. piece of lapis lazuli. Now I can paint the blue sky I will never see. But our shade knows about sky, and he always wonders about, will he ever see the sun? Nope. There's nothing. Nothing, nothing, nothing. 3 nothings to match our 3 disappointments. Perfect. We did find the lapis, so it wasn't for a waste. Actually, speaking of things we can burn, coal, sulfur, and lapis, we can burn all 3. To find 5 pieces of lapis, however, is quite rare, and unfortunately it wouldn't be until closer to the 400th day that more lapis is available for us to burn. And that's just built into the game. A lot of people don't know what lapis is for. This game seems to be gigantic. I wonder if it reaches all the way up to the outside world. Just that little touch of music. So you might recall, when we were at our home, we looked at pictures that we could draw. One was of a spider, and it was titled Friend. One was a black smudge, that was titled Ourself. There was another for a spider web, and that was titled Ladder. So we could climb that web. A piece of lint. I can use 2 of them to start a nice fire at home. It was absolutely invisible to me. I don't know if it was for you. I didn't want to go there anyway. Oh, this is a bug. I found this bug before the very first time I played the game. And I've only seen it then, until now. So, you've witnessed it with me. There's a strange bug for some reason trying to jump there. I think somehow it's connected to the climbing here, where you climb and you fail. And the failing of the climbing is sort of the second phase of an animation sequence. So when we jump there at the other location, and that jump fails, it goes to the second phase of the animation, which for some reason is this position and not the one up there. So it's a small bug. Doesn't hurt gameplay too much. I wonder though, is there some way to take advantage of that, where perhaps failing the jump here would send us up there instead? I don't know how, because we did fail this jump. But yeah, that was not a bit of magic that was intended in the game. Just a harmless bug. if I were to quit the game, come back, and try to jump there again, it'll work as intended. Yeah, this was our adventure for today. And we're at the hour mark. We could keep going, but there are many more days to explore. I'm gonna come over here to the edge of that cliff. We're just gonna have our nap for the day here.